Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode 7 of Be With Me in the book of James. And I'm going to title today Lessons from Nairobi Traffic. Now, Nairobi is a city of 4.5 or 5 million people. And you would think that because there are narrow roads and the roads sometimes are poor, sometimes they're even dirt, and there's 1 million cars or so, and there's maybe 2 million motorcycles, and the city is hilly. And it's a very dynamic city, a lot's happening there. One might think that there might be a problem with the traffic. I don't know if you've ever been to New York City, but basically it's kind of the same setup. Like when you drive in New York City, it's like, hey, gird your loins, every man for himself. It's going to be a mess out there. Well, if you go to Nairobi, it's not like that. It's a system of order and quiet and cooperation. I'm not saying it's not dynamic and there's not a little bit of chaos, but it is so different than anything I've ever experienced before. It's worth the story. It really illustrates what the passage is saying today. There's no horns. No one's beeping at each other. There's no swearing. There's no shouting. The only gesturing that's happening is people waving other people in, waving thank you, flashing their lights in a sort of a cooperative sort of a way. That is, the whole city moves with undergirdings of preference, of saying kind of after you. We asked the guy who was driving around us, he said, isn't this your lane? Why did you let that guy in? He says, well, I have this space, and tomorrow I'll need to get into traffic, and he'll let me in tomorrow, and I'll let him in today. And it's just a whole group of people that are saying, no, after you, giving preference to one another, being in a hurry to give preference, being in a hurry to hear the other person's need, if you will, almost physically illustrating what the passage is saying today. So let's go to the passage. So this is from James chapter 1, I'll start in verse 20. Therefore, put away all filthiness and rampant wickedness, and receive with meekness the implanted word which is able to save your souls. The point of the Nairobi story is that is a physical demonstration of meekness. It's a culture of giving preference. And that's what the Lord is asking. Give a culture of preference in your heart to my implanted word. Okay, then he goes on, verse 22. But be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he's like a man who looks intently at his face in a mirror. For he looks at himself and goes away and at once forgets what he is like. So today's passage is about receiving with meekness, which is, Lord, I want to hear from you. It's less talking at the Lord and more listening of the Lord. That is, being slow to speak, being quick to hear. And it's us in our heart saying, I perhaps should let you go first, Lord. Perhaps I should be slower to be angry and to speak and to fight against you. And I should be quicker to listen. And then it's a posture of hearing from God and then getting knowledge from God. But then there's this intent of obedience, which is, yes, after I receive from you, I'm going to listen and I'm going to do that. So that's what the mirror is. So think about the mirror. You go to the mirror and you got this big gob of toothpaste on your chin. And the picture that he's leaving is you go to the mirror, you have toothpaste on your chin, and you don't wipe it off. You just walk away with the knowledge of having toothpaste on your chin and saying, oh, that's just the way it is. As opposed to the mirror telling you, hey, something's not right here. You have toothpaste on your chin. And the meekness part about this is, rather than go to the mirror pridefully and saying, I'm not going to change anything, you go to the mirror with meekness to say, if you show me toothpaste on my chin, I'm going to correct that. I'm going to hear from you. And maybe, Lord, I should let you go first. Maybe I should be slower to speak and be prideful and slower to be angry and more apt to correct the things that you have for me. So it's receiving with meekness. It means to listen and to do. And remember, we learned 2 weeks ago or so that doing the battle is there's no fruit without the fight. So the meekness is to enter into the fight. And I was thinking that doing is where the rubber meets the road. After the rubber meets the road of meekness of heart. So that we are not just a church of good thinkers and maybe good doers, but we have a heart and intent. The first thing is we hear first, and that's meekness. The second thing is we do second, and that's also meekness. It demonstrates that you actually heard. So why do we receive with weakness? Well, it means that we have the right assessment. It means I go to the mirror and say, I could be wrong. There could be something wrong with me. I could have some imperfection, and you go and you say, yep, there's toothpaste on my chin. And so we use the mirror for the purpose that's intended. That is to tell us who we are, that I want to hear from you, Lord, the mirror. I want to see correctly. And then we go with a posture that if there's something wrong, I'm going to cooperate. It's us saying, like the Nairobi Traffic, that's how we tie in these two ideas. You go first, Lord. I'm going to give you preference. I'm going to give you the proper response of listening. And if I find something, I will do it. It's the going to the mirror and say, I could be wrong in this. I could have something wrong. I'm going to give the mirror a little preference. So not just going to the mirror and saying, yep, I know I have toothpaste on my chin. It's the intention. So meekness is the intention as we go to the mirror that we say, I'm going to give the mirror preference. I'm going to give you preference, Lord, and listen to you. You could be right. I'm going to let you go first. I hear and I see, and then help me, Lord, with the actions that might be necessary. In this case, I'm going to humbly go to the mirror with a posture of meekness that if the Lord shows me something, toothpaste on my chin, I'm going to intent to change that with his help, with the help of the Spirit. So let's go to the mirror with the meekness that Nairobi Traffic demonstrates and their willingness to change that the mirror tells us. Thanks for listening.